My guest today is Mr. Dylan Connor, an American high school teacher, singer, and songwriter. But what makes Dylan stand out is his passion for Syrian people and their cause. Dylan advocates for Syrians through his music and songs, which has touched so many people around the world and especially in Syria. I had the chance and honor to talk to Dylan on the day that Bob Dylan, one of his idols, was nominated the winner of 2016 Nobel Prize in Literature. Hi, Dylan. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation and welcome to Radio Irava.
Thank you for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here.
Dylan, I know that you're a teacher, but I'd like to know what role the music plays in your life and how would you define your art?
Well, music has always been number one in terms of my passions, in my life. Teaching is right up there, but, when it comes down to it, since I can remember, I've loved music and been passionate about music. I grew up in a pretty artistic and musical family and was lucky enough to have very musical neighbors that were next door to me who had instruments and amplifiers and recording equipment. So that was great. They encouraged us. And so every day I have music in my life. So when I'm teaching in my classroom, I bring music into the classroom. I have guitars all over the classroom, and I find ways to incorporate playing music in all areas of my life.
What grade do you teach?
I teach 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades, so the high school level of Latin, ancient language of the Romans. And I use that as a way to also, through the language, learn about, life in the ancient world, ancient history, ancient mythology, and make connections with who we are today as a human race, and try to have the students locate or identify the similarities that we have to ancient people and yet the vast differences and what we can learn from that.
Who was encouraging you to play the music or inspire you?
Well, the inspiration, I'm just thinking about a recording I have of myself when I was 2.5 years old singing Stevie Wonder's song, and I was singing it in tune. And so I think I just had it. I don't think anyone in particular put it in me. I think I was born with a love of music. But I was really inspired by the Beatles and Elvis when I was about 7 years old. I saw a documentary about Elvis's life, and I just flipped out. And then I saw a movie called The Complete Beatles, also when I was 7 years old on my VHS player. And I flipped out over that, and I just had to do that. I had to be a songwriter. I wanted to be a rock star and all that stuff, and be like Elvis and look like Elvis with the hair. And that's kind of where it started. I was super inspired by it all. And then Michael Jackson came along, and he blew my mind. And the band Van Halen was always really big. And then Neil Young and Bob Dylan crept in a little later, when I was mature enough to understand that stuff or to appreciate it. And
Bob Dylan just won the Nobel Prize in Literature.
That is correct. I'm celebrating today. It's huge. What a wonderful thing to happen in these dark times, He's a man who has really changed the landscape of music and what can be said in music. And the depth at which, pop music can go is really thanks to him. And he has such a long career of excellent songs that just defy... they're in a league of their own, for me anyway. I always feel like Bob Dylan is above the rest, in a different place than the rest of his contemporaries, and I'm named after him, and so my father is a huge fan of his, and I've just really grown up feeling like he's almost a member of the family. So he's a huge, huge inspiration. So it's nice to be talking to you about music on the day where he was recognized in this huge, significant way with a Nobel Prize. I only wish the White Helmets had won the Peace Prize to cap it off, to make it all right. Bob Dylan, Elvis, the Beatles, all those big ones, Neil Young, huge inspirations to me. I just loved it all, and even tomorrow night I'm doing a show that's going to be mostly cover tunes and with a 5-piece band, and Saturday night as well. And so sometimes, when I'm not doing my original music, advocating for Syria or just playing other songs I've written that have to do with my own life, I'm playing classic rock stuff and really enjoying that too.
Great. Dylan, I got to know you, or I heard about you when you made public your 2014 song, The Weary World. I hadn't heard any English songs about Syria until then. Needless to say, I've played that song numerous times on my program. But I'd like to know what makes you take such a strong stand and make this kind of music.
Well, first of all, thanks for playing it. It's really cool to know that the song has a life beyond where I created
it. It has touched so many people.
That makes it all worth it.
Dreamers of the weary world, it's time that we woke up. There's another king killing his own people. Dreamers of the weary world, it's time that we woke up and ring them bells from high inside our steeple.
So yeah, the story is that I am not Syrian. I'm just an American, but I happen to marry a beautiful, wonderful woman from Syria, and her name's Reem. She really opened the door to me learning about her culture. The first thing I learned about it was the music of Fairuz. I remember when I went to eat lunch at Reem's apartment for the first time, and she cooked some Syrian food for me and put on Fairuz, and I loved it. And I was like, who is this? I want to hear it again.
I love her too.
Yeah, she's kind of like as famous as Bob Dylan is here, right? If you're a Middle Easterner, she's it. And then I met Reem's family as they would come over for our engagement or wedding. And then after we were married in 2007, we went to Syria for a summer. That really opened my eyes to falling in love with the country in a whole new way, and seeing it through Reem's eyes, as she took me around all her favorite places and introduced me to all our cousins and aunties and uncles, and the wonderful food and the love of the family and the air in the country and the mountains and the ocean, and it all really grabbed me. And so that's how I established my connection with Syria and my love for Syria. And then we went back in 2009 for another summer, and that was wonderful. And when I would go there, I'd actually play music there. We'd find gigs for me at a club in downtown Damascus or something.
Have you had the chance to go back to Syria after 2011?
No. We planned on going to Aleppo in 2011 for that summer, so we were traveling every other summer. But by the time summer 2011 rolled in, it was already too dangerous for us to go, because my wife and her family had been very active on Facebook against the regime, so it wasn't an option for us to go travel there in 2011 like we had planned. Her mother had already been arrested and released, thank goodness. And I have been to the border of Turkey to work with the Syrian refugee children. I did that in 2014. It was amazing, just an amazing experience. It was a beautiful experience and difficult, but I did music classes for some refugee children at a school that you've probably heard of, the Al Salam School. Actually, I did a benefit for that school in Canada last year, which was great. I was supposed to go back this summer, but the day of my flight was the coup in Turkey, and so that got canceled.
When you were in that refugee camp, did you talk to children? Did you talk to people about their situation? What did they tell you? What did they want from somebody from U.S.?
They didn't seem to want much than just love and acknowledgement. They were so happy that I think a group of people had traveled there. Myself, I was just one of about 30 teachers from around the world who came and from different places. And I think that they were thankful that people cared. I think that they wanted us to know that they need help and that they are fiercely proud of their country and they really, really want to go back. And I think that they want help getting back home. That's really what the kids had to tell me, was that, they had seen terrible things. They blame Bashar al-Assad. They would always make sure I knew that, and they would tell me about terrible things they had seen with people being killed and, but how they really missed their home and wanted to go back.
And it's got worse since 2014. Dylan, I listened to one of your recordings on YouTube a while ago. I'm talking about a blind eye.
Oh, yeah.
Could you tell us about it and why you wrote that?
Sure. Okay, so I remember when President Obama said the United States doesn't turn a blind eye to massacres and genocide. That's not who we are. And I thought, yeah, you're right. That's a good statement. He might have been referring to Libya, but when we intervened there, and his logic was, well, we saw there was going to be a massacre and we had to stop it. Gaddafi and his troops were, going to come and slaughter everybody in that part of the country. And so Obama said, we don't let that happen. That's not who we are. And I agreed with that. And then it came around to Syria, and all of a sudden, later in the Arab Spring, and obviously Syria is more personal to me than Libya, because I have family there and I've been there. And I thought, well, all right, these people are standing up for their freedom, and they're getting shot down and they're getting massacred. Hopefully we'll help in some way. do the right thing, and we didn't. And it was very painful to watch as my country could do something and didn't. And then, of course, the red line, and when the chemical weapons attack happened, I was sure that we would act, and Obama came on TV and said we would act. He said, I have decided that we need to retaliate for this, or, take action. And then he didn't.
Unfortunately.
Which really blew my mind, and it made me very angry.
I'm not a Syrian, and I was very angry when he said that, when he did nothing. Still to this day, I'm very disappointed at him.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you feel that way too. I mean, I certainly feel that way, and I voted for Obama twice, and I do believe that a lot of what he's done for our country is very good. But his foreign policy and his decisions in the Middle East, I really think have been very poor, and I think he's gone against the advice of most of his cabinet. I think that they all were arguing for more decisive action in Syria, and he said no for whatever reason, and that really made me angry, and that's why I wrote the song A Blind Eye, because he said we won't turn a blind eye to this kind of genocide. And there's that saying from way back after World War II that no, never again. This will never happen in the world again. And
it's happening.
And it's happening right in front of our eyes, and we see it every day. And it's just mind-boggling and heartbreaking how no one's standing up for these people. And I can't get my head around it. So a lot of my music comes from that frustration and that anger. So, yeah, A Blind Eye comes from that. And really, I just wanted to take on President Obama one-on-one and go right down the list. You said you wouldn't turn a blind eye, but you did. And there's a genocide happening, and you're not doing anything about it. And your red line was, I'd say in the song, it was more like a green light.
You said we must not turn a blind eye. You said we must not turn a blind eye in the face of a genocide. But you were taking us all for a ride. For the whole world now it's plain to see how empty your words can be. You said the tyrant must step aside. You said the tyrant must step aside. Since then, hundreds of thousands have died. Their bodies are washing in with the tide. It's clear that your bark has no bite. I don't know how you can sleep at night.
In general, Dylan, when you look at the world powers, none of them are, I feel like they are hesitating for something. I don't know what they're waiting for. It's been over 5 years now. Syrian people are being massacred every day. The Aleppo is ruined. I mean, when you see these pictures, it's just shocking. It's heartbreaking. I don't know how to describe it, but it's not human to look at these and do nothing.
It's my way of doing something.
Exactly.
And just to follow up on your saying, so I can't do much, right? I can't change much, but I love music.
But what do you think? What do you think should happen in Syria?
What should happen is that the international community, with the leadership of the United States, because I think you need that, because we're the only ones who could really take on Russia in a serious way and negotiate with Russia from a place of power. We need to make some kind of settlement with them and bring in the opposition. There's the HNC, the High Negotiation Committee, and some other groups that are kind of fall under that umbrella need to be brought in. I would say probably to northern Syria at first with a no-fly zone over Aleppo. So I would suggest securing that area, no-fly zone in Aleppo. That way people aren't rushing out of the country. Maybe some people on the border in Turkey can come back into the country instead of going out. And then you can bring in the opposition representatives on the ground into Syria to start having some kind of, new government starting to work there, I would say probably in the north. And then through some kind of negotiation with Russia that you can bring the opposition and the remnants of the state apparatus together to form a new and representative government from all parts of the Syrian society. I don't think you need to get rid of the entire army or anything like that. I mean, we saw what happened in Iraq when you fire the whole army. I think that the opposition and the remnants of the regime would have to come together in negotiation and agree that no one's going to win this war, and we have to come together to save the country. Of course, anyone who has blood on their hands, has ordered mass murder or anything like that, has to then answer to their crimes in a court.
But the perpetrators of the Syrian massacre, it's not only Russia or Assad, it's Iranian regime too. They have deployed so many soldiers to Syria to kill people.
I know.
So
yeah.
What is your stand on that?
My knowledge of Iran is minimal. I'm aware of what you just said, that there are a lot of Iranian military in Syria working on behalf of or helping to prop up Assad. To tell you the truth, I think the reason that Obama never acted is because there was something about that Iranian nuclear deal where they said, listen, if you touch Syria, the deal's off. Maybe that was part of the deal, something to do with, okay, you got to leave Syria to us and you mind your own business, and that's part of our nuclear deal. That's the only way I can really, or one of the only ways I can really try to figure out why Obama's been so blatantly inactive in the face of such horror. Because I think his biggest accomplishment in his mind was that Iranian nuclear deal, and he wouldn't want to jeopardize that. So I have a feeling that somehow, if he were to intervene in Syria, the Iranians would feel like that is a deal breaker. I don't know if you know anything about the ins and outs of that, but I just kind of have had a hunch about that. I don't really have anything to back it up. So I don't know how the Iranians would be involved in the negotiations. I imagine that they would be part of the Russian side of things, right? So like Russia, Iran.
I think Russia has its own agenda, Dylan, and Iranian regime has a bigger agenda than Obama has ever imagined.
Right.
So,
well, I think the Iranian regime probably has a lot of historical and religious motivations that the Russians wouldn't have, right? I mean, the Russians are just blatantly geopolitical.
That's right.
But the Iranian regime has real vision about religion and the,
Shia empire. Dylan, on October 4th at the vice president debate, Mr. Kaine and Mr. Pence, they both agreed that a no-fly zone is needed in Syria. Do you think when the new president is chosen in November, there's going to be a change in foreign policy in respect to the Syrian crisis?
Yes. I actually just had dinner recently with one of the Syrian opposition leaders, and seemed clear to me that Trump presidency would be a disaster, not only for, obviously, in my opinion, for the world and America, but it would be a disaster for the hopes of the Syrian opposition. But Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, I think has the ear of the Syrian opposition. And she's on the right path with her thinking about backing the rebels more robustly and a no-fly zone in the north. I think that's the absolute way to go for a first step in our intervention. So I would say that our hope is that Hillary Clinton will be elected, and it will change the United States action in Syria. I've been told by people who actually advise her that she's got the right idea about following through with no-fly zone and more support of the rebels.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Dylan, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think the world is changing and activism is in different areas is being redefined as well. At the same time as the gap between music and politics and activism is getting narrower and narrower, artists are still approaching it with skepticism and caution that, it may not be good for business or whatever. Have you thought about this as a musician?
Well, the thing that stuck out to me is where's the protest music? In the 60s, let's go back to Bob Dylan because of his award today. The thing that really made him famous was his amazing protest music in the 60s. And right now, it's such a huge moment in the world. I mean, I think we can all agree that things are kind of more messed up at the moment than they usually are. And there's no popular music that's protest music. And I think it says something about what you're getting at here, that people somehow feel disconnected from that as a subject matter or afraid of it, or I don't know exactly what it is, but I certainly feel like I'm one of the few singing the types of songs I am, especially something like A Blind Eye, by the way, which is going to have a new recording of that song and a new video coming out probably in the next couple of weeks.
Great.
It'll kind of feature me kind of facing President Obama in an interview and speaking these words at him and his reactions and that kind of thing. And it will also show a lot of names and of children who've been killed while the president's turned his back on the situation. And, a lot of people I tell about the video feel uncomfortable. They don't necessarily want to work on it, or they think I should wait till after the election, or is it really okay to sing that kind of song right now? And I don't really have any hesitation. I think that protest music is important, and I'm kind of wondering where the hell it all is right now.
Exactly.
It's a really good question, I have to say. I don't know what the answer is, especially with what's going on with Donald Trump. I mean, our nation's at risk of electing a really unfit, narcissistic guy who's really in it for himself and his own power trip, and has woken up the part of our country which is full of bigotry and hate and violence, and it's a dangerous moment. And I wish more artists had come out and sang about it. I was psyched to see that Rage Against the Machine, or a great rock band, got back together, called themselves something else. It was like Rage Against something, not the Machine. And they played at all the debates, like outside the building. They would set up and play their protest music and stuff. So, there are some heavy hitters that are doing something, but it's certainly not getting much press.
It's very unfortunate. Dylan, tell us about your latest album.
Spirit Glue. 2 albums ago I did the Syria album. So, that was 5 songs all about Syria, and it was very heavy. And, playing those concerts was emotional, So I kind of wanted to get away from that a little bit and do some songs that were more personal, more about just my life.
But the last song, If You Want Peace, Prepare for War, is not very personal. It's still, you can't get away from it.
No, I know. Well, I was going to say, now the Syrian issue, because it's getting worse, not better, is, it's a part of my life. And so even if I'm not writing a song that's like Weary World, where I'm being very literal about who's doing what and who's to blame for what, I'm still deeply affected by this stuff. So on this record, it comes out in a different way. One of the songs is called All Sides of the Sun, and it's really about my father's experience. He went over to Lesbos in Greece to bring in the boats from Turkey with the Syrian refugees. And, what he experienced there inspired this song, and Elan Kurdi and inspired this song. So the song's really about being a father and making the decision with your children to put them in a boat and not knowing whether you'll live or die, but knowing that that's your best option and what that must be like. I just think it's like the worst thing in the world, being a parent with a little child and trying to convince the child that it's okay, get in the boat, we're going to be fine, and then you're not. And then it tips over and someone dies. And, my dad was there to experience that stuff firsthand, where, a father came into the shore and literally had just lost a child right out there in the water. So that song is purely inspired by what's going on. And then, as you said, if you want peace, prepare for war, that's really about me getting away from unwillingly growing out of my idealism, where, I listen to the Beatles and Bob Marley and Bob Dylan and hear their awesome songs about peace and be inspired that that's all you needed to change the world were these songs. And then I grew up and this thing in Syria happens and you just watch the utter horror unleashed every day, and these songs don't seem to be doing anything. And in the reality of war and the reality of geopolitical power struggles, that sometimes artistic idealism doesn't cut it. And and then I don't know what the answer is, but I guess I just became less naive and a little more hardened to the reality of the brutality of governments and all that. So that's what that song's about, is, these songs are great and artists and idealists are great and they provide so much to the world, but really, is that going to help the next person who's going to get crushed by a bomb in Syria? I don't know. So it's like a moment of confusion and a moment of losing a little bit of my hope.
How people are reacting to your new album, Dylan?
Well, it's not officially out yet. The people who have the album are people who contributed to its making on Pledge Music, which was a wonderful experience. Hard work, but it's nice to have your fans contribute to the making of your album, helping to pay for it. And so about 120 people did that, helped to support me making the album. And so those 120 people have copies of the album, digital copies. And the response is really cool. I'm enjoying hearing what people's favorite songs are and why. But I have gotten a strong response from that one. That last song on the album seems to stick out. And the first song, Spirit Glue, people seem to really connect with right off the bat. So in terms of a response, so far so good. But, when it officially comes out, I think it'll be easier to tell the response is. I also have videos for every song, so that'll help as well to get the album out there and recognized.
Sure. And when will it come out?
I'm hoping before the end of the year.
Dylan, I know musicians and artists in general, they regard their songs and their creations as their babies, if you will. But if you had to choose two of your favorite songs,
that's so true.
Which one would it be?
I guess I would say Feza Feza.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Because it meant something to people.
Then the air whispered our demands. A group of schoolboys painted on a wall. It said we want the regime to fall.
And that was such a gift because I've been writing songs for a long, long time. But that song really meant something to some people, and that's very rewarding to hear people tell me, oh my gosh, when I heard that song, I was so amazed, or I couldn't believe this American guy was singing about us. Or for your listeners, I don't know if they know, but this song, Feza Feza, was translated to help in Arabic. And Feza is a word that not all Syrians know. It's from the south near the Jordanian border where the villages are where my wife's family originate. People who heard it over there in Syria really thanked me for it, and that's why it's one of my favorites, because I felt a real connection to an audience, and I felt like, wow, I reached them all the way across the ocean. They heard it. They know that I stand in solidarity with them, which was beautiful. Other than that one, I have a song called Love's an Infection that I wrote in 2004. And it's one of my favorites just because I think if I can be objective and look at myself, look at my own songs like I would look at my favorite artist's songs. So try to get out of my own way and look at my songs and be like, okay, which one of these really stands out as a good piece of artwork, as a solid quality song? I think that one does. And you can hear it. It's on my website, dylanconnor.com. The album's called Plug In, and the song's called Love's an Infection. And I just think it's a well-crafted song. It was very inspired, and instead of the song being literal, I kind of was painting with the words, trying to paint images with words that suggest what it feels like to go through a really bad breakup. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When a love affair comes to an end and it didn't go the way you wanted, and you feel like you're in the dark. So yeah, the title speaks for itself, Love's an Infection.
Dylan, for the last question, are your kids interested in music at all?
Yeah. My daughter's name is Faye-Ruz, funny enough.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So, I was named after Bob Dylan, and so my daughter is named after a great singer, too, Faye-Ruz. She loves to sing. She writes some lyrics sometimes, and she plays on the piano a little bit. And last night I was singing to her a James Taylor song at bedtime. Good night, you moonlight ladies. Rock-a-bye, sweet baby James. Deep greens and blues are the colors I choose. Won't you let me go down in my dreams and rock-a-bye, sweet baby James? She wanted me to sing that to her, and she started singing along with me. I've been singing it to her since she was a baby, so it was a really beautiful moment to hear her kind of join in with me and want to hear it. So I think, I'm constantly providing music, whether it's at bedtime or in the car or she comes to a concert. And then my boy Jude is 3, and he likes to sing too. He likes the Beatles. He wants me to sing Strawberry Fields Forever all the time.
That's nice. Dylan,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure and treat for me to talk to you, and I hope you see peace in Syria very, very soon.
Thanks so much, and I hope you edit the heck out of this interview because I rambled so much.
Good luck with your performance tomorrow. Is it tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night I got one, and then Saturday night I have one, and I could use the luck. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Paul McCartney said, let it be. That ain't gonna work for me. The call to action can't be ignored. If you want peace, you better prepare for war. Bob Dylan said the answer's blowing in the wind. That won't help to save my dying friend. It don't help to even the score. If you want peace, you better prepare for war. It's true now, and it was true before. From the Roman kings to the U.S. Senate floor. John Lennon said, give peace a chance. That might be the most noble stance, but it don't help to clean the blood off the killing floor. If you want peace, you better prepare for war. It's true now, and it was true before. From the walls of Troy to that Manhattan Island shore. Bob Marley said, one love, one heart. That's an ideal achieved in art, but it ain't the world outside my door. If you want peace, you better prepare for war. Pete Seeger said if I had a bell, but I couldn't hear 'em, the bombs fell, and I don't think I can sing no more. If you want peace, you better prepare. If you want peace, you better prepare. If you want peace, you better prepare for war.